this very little few minutes, few seconds, you actually you are processing the whole thing, and you're telling yourself, should I take him back, should I just leave him, or should I wake up his parents, right? So that means all this happens within span of seconds. So that particular way, that mode is also manas. It gives emotions and it creates choices of actions, presents different choices. And we are not trying to abort all these faculties. They are very important for you to live a sane, healthy life. What we are trying to do is, with those faculties, I have a wrong identification as I'm just removing it so that those faculties are used adequately. Okay? So therefore, this mind is something which is that thoughts that you have, they can be the first category. They can be categorized in four ways. The first way is manas. The second is buddhi. Buddhi is nishchayatmikaha buddhi. Okay? So that means you can say it intellect. In English, if you want to use the word, you would say it's intellect. Okay? So how intellect is different from emotions? In few ways. We also use cognitive capacity. You send your kids to school and they are studying, let's say, mathematics. Are they using their emoting mind? No. When they are using 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, is it the emotions? No. What is this? This is what we call the intellect. Intellect means you have the capacity to understand certain things as they are. Okay? Whether it is mathematics or it's physics or it's biology or it's medicine or whatever. Okay? So these thoughts are not just random thoughts running around, right? They have a function, very sophisticated function. So that is what we call the intellect. So with this intellect, from, as a child, you can learn 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, and as you become an adult, you can discover amazing things. You can become what? Nobel laureate. All using your cognitive capacities. You can have some major breakthroughs in what you have discovered. This cognitive capacity is not only with reference to, sometimes I have a friend who's teaching she's a teacher in New Zealand, and what she does, she's amazing. She says that most of the kids nowadays, they have some fear of mathematics. They grow up with, I'm not good at math. Especially in the West, it's a very thing in fashion. I'm not good at math. Okay, so that means what she's saying is, even if you're a painter, you actually have some understanding of mathematics. Why? Because let's say you have this amount, and if you want to draw something beautiful, you need to understand the space. And your mind has done lots of calculations without you realizing it, to say, okay, this I have to place here, and then that has to be here, to create a harmony. To create a harmony, even in anything that you do, even if it is painting, the mind has calculated many things without your recognizing it. Okay? Any given dance that you want to do, and you can have a dance which is a very mediocre dance, or you can have a dance which creates an impact. Movements are all what? Timed, and this aesthetics that we understand, it's all what? if you, which line, permutations, combinations, what will go when. If you don't do things accurately, what it will create in the visual thing, what disharmony.
It has to be synchronized.
It has to be synchronized. Music, raga rendering, it's all mathematics. Beads everywhere. What she says is, we think that only when you add there is mathematics. In fact, the human mind is born with what? This whole understanding of harmony. Whether it is music or it is art or it is dance, it is all, our mind is figuring out a lot of mathematics. And if you begin to teach child that inherent mathematics, that the child is capable of figuring it out, she said there will be no one child who will claim, I'm not good at math. Because they have it, but they don't recognize it. Okay, so therefore, this cognitive capacity, human cognitive capacity, is something which is amazing. How much it can figure out. Buddhi. Now, this buddhi also is used for making what? Decisions. So that means manas creates choices, but among different choices, which one do I select? That is done where? At the level of buddhi, intellect. So that means the mind has created options. In that case, what? Ignore the situation, help the child, and bring the child back from running across, wake up the parents. These are all the options. Then using your buddhi, you will make what? You exactly one choice. And that buddhi for everyone is what? Will give different choices. That means that how cultivated your buddhi is. If your mind is not cultivated, where there are options, what will happen? You see no options. You create what? An impasse where there is no impasse. If you tell yourself, right, that okay, in this given situation, okay, there are billions of kids in India, they are all helpless and I can't be bothered about it. Then where there are options, your mind, what do? You don't create adequate options.
Clouded.
It's clouded. You are not using your faculty of mind with its potential. When you have not created enough options, then what? Where is the question of any decision making? You're aborting, you're operating at what?
Lower level.
Exactly. Suboptimal level. You're not thinking about things which what you actually need to think about. Many of the things we become so superficial because our mind is gathered with lots of information which is useless, and what is important we don't think about enough. Okay, so these faculties are not ordinary. Even though they are not I, they are very important faculties. You need to develop them. Okay, so therefore this particular thing of anytime anybody comes to me with a problem and they present the situation as though there is no solution, I said I am not going to even begin to talk, because there is no situation in this world where you can't do anything.
It's because the emotions sometimes overwhelm you and you're not able to.
Absolutely.
You don't think clearly.
So that means this faculty of mind, please understand, which is manas, which gives you different options. You have not creates different options. You have not developed it enough. You need to develop that. In this given scenario, what all can I do? So you are not, the mind is not something you ignore. You need to actually work on making it really sharp. If you use Vedanta to say, I'm not the mind, I'm not the mind, you will not get anywhere. You need to make it sharp because it is working at a very suboptimal level. All confusion. Where there are choices, I don't see the choices. If I don't see the choices, how will I find the solution? Among the choices, I need to weigh pros and cons of each choice, and then I have to make a decision as to which among these choices I'm going to choose to go with. So that means that your mind is capable of doing all this. Please understand, the thoughts that you have are not just random thoughts. Extremely well organized. Okay, all these faculties. Manas, buddhi. Okay. The third one is chitta. Okay, so now imagine you have all these different thoughts.
Chitta.
If you had no memory, one thought will come and it will go and you will have no recollection. And the second thought will come and it will go and you will have no recollection. How will you live your life? By the time you finish having one thought, you forget. When the thought goes, you will forget. Right? So this is what we call the chittam. What creates what all these different thoughts into one coherent what picture, memory, right? So that means if I ask you now, how was your childhood? So what will you tell me? All different stories related to your childhood. Now that means this memory is something which is it always active? Before I ask you this question, is it something that it's constantly running in your mind? No. So that means when I ask you that question, you have the ability, in your memory there can be so much data. Please understand, the minute I begin to ask you this question, what will you do? You will retrieve that given memory and you will surface it and you will answer my question. Okay? All the exams that are taken are what? You learn, everything is stored in the memory. You don't know what is going to be asked in the exam. When the exam question comes, what do you need to do? Retrieve the relevant information. You could have studied all kinds of things, but if that question doesn't come, there is no need to retrieve that memory. Okay? That relevant memory you need to retrieve and you need to respond. Okay? So therefore, this memory function is a huge function. Okay? Now, there is one thing couple of things that you must recognize, which are very important things. One is, there is a lot of this Neo-Vedanta, they talk about being in the present. Being in the present is a good thing. There is nothing wrong with it. But if by that you imply that you forget about everything, you are doing one huge disservice. Because a memory is such an important function. You can't eliminate. First of all, nobody can eliminate memory. And imagine your child is told to remain in the present and he says, I am remaining in the present. I have not retrieved anything from my memory in my exam. What will you do to that child? Mama, I am following your advice, living in the present. Present is just presence. Who cares about all the memory storage, whatever I have studied in school? Who cares? You will be the most unhappy person. Don't tell anybody else or don't buy that picture for yourself. Ask anybody who has Alzheimer, where they forget. They are always in present. They don't remember anything. they forget how to open the drawer, they forget their own relatives, they forget everything. What miserable life is. Memory is the greatest gift. If your memory is playing up, right, generally what happens is, as I told you, you have selective memory. When you were a child, lots and lots of things happened, but you hold on to what? Some memories, and so that means there is a selective memory. Sometimes those selective memories can create, they can create a scenario which is not a healthy scenario. And as you begin to live your life, you keep on reinforcing the same thing, and you end up multiplying it. That is the part of the memory that you need to take care of, because it's giving you an orientation which is what? Unhealthy orientation. So just because there is this power, when it is not channelized adequately, it has created certain distortions. You don't eliminate what? The whole function. What do? You just reprogram that part which is dysfunctional. You don't eliminate memory. If it is creating a given orientation which is an unhealthy orientation, what do? You begin to put it back in place. Okay, so that means the memory, according to modern psychology, has two parts. One is the conscious memory, and the other one is the unconscious memory. When there are a lot of things that happen, I don't know whether in this class or in some other class, there's so many classes I even forgot. Let's say, what is this unconscious memory? Okay, so let's say that a child is growing up in a home where parents are fighting. Okay, so as a child, you understand that the kids know. So the kids know that there is some kind of a disharmony. Okay, and you think like our teacher used to say that parents come to us and they said, oh, we don't fight in front of our kids. So then our teacher used to say, so that means you fight behind the doors. And if you fight behind the doors, don't think that the child doesn't know. They know it. Okay? So therefore, when there is a disharmony, then for that child, right, the brain of the child is not yet well developed. So they understand some disharmony, but they don't quite know how to make sense of it. They don't have adequate data, adequate understanding of how to make sense of it. So each child reacts differently. Okay? One child can think that my parents are like gods, they can't do anything wrong. So what? I must have done something to create that disharmony. This is this whole problem of what we call personalization. The problem which is out there is what? Seen as we take it upon ourselves. Now, if the child orientation is not corrected, anything that happens as an adult, whatever happens, you feel what? You keep blaming yourself. You keep thinking that I must have done something wrong, I should have, So you constantly, somebody they didn't say hi to you because the person was preoccupied, and you keep on running this, what could I have done wrong, maybe I did this, maybe I did that. There's this whole big thing of what? Personalization. That becomes an orientation. Okay? In the second scenario, the child can become, in the perception of the child. We are not talking about the external reality. Okay? The person can identify with one person and says, okay, my mom is right and my dad is abusing her. That is the perception of the child in the second case. Okay? Now, that means the child would develop what? resentment towards father. Over a period of time, what will happen is it can get the child goes to the teacher, finds a male teacher who's a little strict. There are 5 male teachers, 4 are fine, 1 is strict. The child, that male, exactly, selective memory, right? So that means I'm starting with a point that my father figure is not fair. Out of these 5 teachers, 4 are male, fine, 1 is a little strict. What will the child do? Add on, the male figure is unfair, right? So therefore the child will then it's multiplying and growing, that building up, creating a story. Then when they have friends, right? There are 10 friends, 2 are mean, male friends. What will he do? Again build up. Over a period of time, life orientation becomes what? Male figure is not trustworthy. That becomes an untold orientation. That means every time, or sometimes when even that one person who is nice, you will always impute some meaning where actually it is not there. So you create a selective memory and you keep on building a picture and you don't even realize what you're doing. You start living with that orientation and you start believing that this is how external world is. Where is the problem? In your own perception of how you have collected what certain memories, and you've created one whole big picture which is creating an unconscious mind. Some external situations can trigger that unconscious mind and you operate from there. This is what we call dysfunctional. But as long as you think that the problem is external, will you do anything about it? No. Because you don't even realize that the problem is what? Is here. So that means you'll keep on reinforcing and making it larger and larger and larger. So that means this memory function that we have is not some ordinary thing. So much of our behavior is from that unconscious person. This is why many times when people come to me with a relational problem, they tell me that otherwise this person is really nice, but sometimes the person is so angry or whatever. So what happens? Normally the person is operating from conscious mind, then the unconscious takes over. When the unconscious takes over, all the rationality is lost. The lucidity is lost. The normal understanding is not available to that person. It's as though that particular pain or that particular perception takes over. And your whole behavior, your interpretation, everything is done from that. Your reactions are from there. Okay? So that means this memory is conscious and unconscious. Now, if you have to, that maybe these are just functions of your mind, but because they are not you, can you say, let me ignore them? You can't say that. When Vedanta talks about a fact, it doesn't mean that you just ignore all these activities, your emotions, your cognitive capacity, your memory. Otherwise, it would become a simplistic escape. Vedanta will become an escape. Because all your problems are at the level of mind. And if I tell you you are independent of the mind, and if you understand that because I'm independent of the mind, I have to ignore whatever happens in my mind, you will not do yourself a service. this instrument is something that you need to have a sharp, clear, clean instrument to understand this bigger picture. If it is all confused instrument, if the charioteer is all drunk, the charioteer has no clue, even though the owner of the charioteer is independent of that charioteer, that the owner needs the charioteer to go to the destination. If the charioteer has zero capacity to analyze, zero lucidity, how will the owner of the chariot reach the destination? Okay, so that means if the owner of the chariot wants to reach the destination, has to ensure that the charioteer is what? Very skilled, very alert, is lucid, has clarity about where one has to go, how does one go there, navigate effectively. Okay, so therefore this the mind, this whole antakarana is not I, which if Vedanta teacher doesn't know how to handle it, it becomes an escape. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the senses, and it's just like a parrot. People repeat like parrot. And I've studied Vedanta for 10 years. But if you understand Vedanta properly, then it becomes a lifetime's job to what? This faculty of mind, which is all distorted and all fraught with all these problems, it can take lifetime to undo it all and to have clarity, which then enables you to understand the bigger reality. Okay? So therefore, this memory is a function. Now, there is a fourth function, which is what we call ahankara.
So the antakarna is basically...
Antakarna is the internal, karana means instrument, and internal instrument. So that means this whole faculty of what we call mind, but that mind itself is divided into four facets. One is manas, so that means, because the unfortunate thing is that manas is generally translated as mind, so then all the other functions, so that's why that the overall the overall name is antakarana within that four categories. The first one is manas, the second is buddhi, the third is chittam, the memory, and the fourth is ahankara. Right? So now this ahankara is also another thing which in when I give this classes of Vedanta, so people very often ask me, so what does ahankara mean? Does it mean ego? If I use the word ego, what is the meaning that you give to this word ego? Negative. Exactly. So there is some kind of a negative connotation with reference to ahankara. And then you want to get rid of your ahankara. So elimination of ahankara becomes like spiritual pursuit. Here in Vedanta, ahankara is a function of the mind. Right? What is aham is I, kara means that sense of I. So therefore, there is
A-H-A-M-O-N.
so the sandhi rule makes it into ahankara. N. Yeah. But otherwise it is aham and kara, but the sandhi rule makes it into ahankara. Ahankara is a function of the mind. Please understand. You are born with this I sense. Kara is sense of I. What is this sense of I? This sense of I is an interesting thing. When certain emotion is taking place, let's say that of sadness, okay, what do you tell? Do you just experience the emotion, or do you say, I am sad? Exactly. So that means there is an I thought, please understand, right, which gets connected with what? Whichever emotion is at that given point in time, and imputes that emotion to what? I. Okay, so therefore entire, all your emotional life, whatever that thought is, gets imputed on I, even though the emotions are changing. So you keep on, one day you say I'm happy, next day you say you're sad, because every emotion, just what it is, instead of seeing it as it is, it gets imputed onto I. But that's a human program, so you don't need to correct it. That's how human being is wired. Okay, now the second thing is not only your emotions but your cognitive capacity. You go to school and the teacher is teaching you different theories, and you are able to understand them well. Okay, so that means what? Your buddhi is operating well because you are able to capture ideas accurately. But what do you tell yourself? I am intelligent. One thing is your faculty working well, but what happens? You impute that onto I. Right? And what, for example, so that means you begin to have, right, a self-opinion. The self-opinion can be, I am really intelligent, right, and I am emotionally also what? Healthy. I'm a cool person. So you can keep on building what? That I sense. If the parents give positive feedback, then what? The child begins to have good self-worth, confidence. Your whole I sense, it's all work on your I sense. Please understand. What is your self-worth? Okay. A lot of times the major problem people have is lack of self-worth. The minute somebody abuses you and you choose not to do it because you don't have enough self-worth, you feel that you don't deserve better treatment. Then you blame the person, but actually there is a problem of self-worth. Even to begin to realize that, it takes people years. They are passive, they choose to be passive, and then what? They attribute all the problems to somebody else. Okay, so that means this I sense is something which is what? You take together your emotions, you put together what? Your cognitive capacity, you put together what? Your memories, and you create an I sense. So in the sense, as I told you, that memory of a child feeling I'm responsible for what happened to my parents, right? Then that interferes with what? That ahankara, that sense of I the person has is what? Damaged, because the person constantly feels that what? I'm to be blamed, I'm responsible for many things that happen. Okay? So your I sense builds over a period of time and gives you a sense of identity. And this is why each one, if I ask you who you are deeply, we all have different what? Self-identities based on what has happened to us, and also the meaning that we have given to what has happened to us, and also the functions, the faculties that we have. You can say I'm intelligent, somebody can say I'm emotionally intelligent, I have IQ, somebody says I have EQ. So that means you have a whole sense of I, which is what is ahankara. Right? Now everybody operates thinking that this ahankara is true I. This is the only reality about it. What does Vedanta say? That this ahankara, that I sense, it gets what, sometimes it gets what connected with your memory. Sometimes it gets connected with your cognitive capacity. Sometimes it gets connected with your emotions, right? So that means, and emotions are changing, cognitive capacities are changing, memories are changing, and this I sense is also equally changing, but it seems like to you like what? A permanent real entity. Okay? Now, what Vedanta says is, who are you? You are not this ahankara, you are chit. You are the awareness, because of which what? The changing conditions of your I sense are also known to you. So that means the mind, antakarana, has 4 types of facets of thinking. One is emotions, which present choices. The other one is buddhi, which enables you to make decisions. Then the memories and your sense of I. All these are variable. Who are you is the awareness, because of which you can see everything which is variable. Now, this awareness is already independent of whatever sense of I that you have. You can have good self-esteem, I can have bad self-esteem, or whatever, right? And regardless of whatever self-esteem, whatever cognitive capacity, whatever memory, whatever emotions, whatever happens, they are all very different, but that awareness is never affected by any of the 4 functions. But because it is not affected by any of the 4 functions, you cannot ignore those functions. Because imagine your sense of I is what you constantly blame yourself. Now Vedanta shows that awareness, because of which you see this sense of persecution, is already free. When you go out there, will you operate from freedom, or will you operate from that feeling of a self-blame? Tomorrow, when you walk out and you have years and years of orientation that I'm no good, I'm responsible for everything, I have done. So that means you've created such a huge story, and you have listened to 1 hour of Vedanta. What will have more strength when you go out there? What you have learnt now, or what you have been and what you have thought all these years?
You hear it, but you're not able to apply it. It's all these years conditioning.
Exactly. All these years of conditioning and all these distorted thinking that you have is not going to be erased in 1 hour of Vedanta. But what is very important is, before you had no other input. Now Vedanta is giving you what? New input. But this has taken its deep roots. Now to undo that, and to whatever Vedanta teaches you, for that to take deep root, how long does it take? It requires time, it requires energy, it requires effort. Because there is a strength of your past interpretation. That I feel that I'm no good is not going to be erased by this feeling that I'm free from everything. So therefore, that there is years of reorientation. Because these orientations that we have acquired, it is a result of every situation has occurred. We've given it we've further strengthened those conclusions, and we have built on that. So it is like this: you have 2 ropes, and I keep on knotting it and knotting it and knotting it further and further. Now, if I ask you to undo it, would you be able to undo it in one time? No. It will require, because it has become complex. slowly, slowly. Slowly, slowly, but you can't, you have no other choice.
With patience and perseverance.
Absolutely. Okay, so therefore, even though, so this charioteer is not is not I. The chariot owner, in order to reach the destination, has to have what? The charioteer who is skillful. So all these faculties of emotions, cognitive capacity, memory, and sense of I, even though it is not I, from dysfunctional you have to make it what? Only then that bigger thing you will understand.
That will happen only through the knowledge.
That will happen. Bhagavad Gita takes care of it. This is why it is an amazing book. It's just mind-blowing that there is a book like this. It has the whole methodology to help you to undo all of this mess that we have created because of our lack of clarity. Okay, so now what is the time? 1:45. Okay, so now I will stop. So all this is not I. Then we think that I know what I is, but what is I is even bigger surprise. So now we will see it in the next class.
We don't have class next Tuesday.
Yeah. So I'll just close with the prayer. Then Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.